Hi students, welcome to Bodhimaram Academy YouTube channel. 10th சயின்ஸ்ல யூனிட் வைஸா நம்ம வந்து 1 மார்க் பார்த்துட்டு இருக்கோம். ஸோ எல்லாம் ஒன்னோடையும் முடிக்க போறோம். முடிச்சுட்டு இன்னைக்கு தான் லாஸ்ட் யூனிட் நம்பர் 15. இதுக்கப்புறம் யூனிட் நம்பர் 16 எல்லாமே நம்ம ஆல்ரெடி சேனல்ல இருக்கு, பார்த்துக்கோங்க. ஸோ யூனிட் 15 நர்வஸ் சிஸ்டம். இன்னையோட நம்ம சயின்ஸ்ல பிசிக்ஸ், கெமிஸ்ட்ரி, பயாலஜி எல்லா ஒவ்வொரு யூனிட்டோடைய புக் இன்சைடு 1 மார்க்ஸும் நம்மகிட்ட இருக்கு. சரிங்களா? ஸோ இன்னைக்கு இந்த யூனிட்டை பார்ப்போம். ஸோ என்னோட வாட்ஸ்அப் நம்பர் கொடுத்துருக்கேன். உங்களுக்கு ஆன்லைன் டியூஷன் வேணும், என்சிஆர்டி படிக்கிறீங்க, இல்லை ஸ்டேட் போர்ட் படிக்கிறீங்க, பிசிக்ஸ், கெமிஸ்ட்ரி, மேக்ஸ் வேணும்னா நீங்கள் காண்டாக்ட் பண்ணுங்க. ஃபர்தரான டீட்டெயில் நம்ம சொல்கிறேன். சரிங்களா? வாட்ஸ்அப்பில். ஓகே, ஸோ நம்ம 1 மார்க்குள்ளே போகலாம். இன்ட்ரடக்ஷனில் the changes in the environmental condition that are detected by receptor present in the body are called stimulus. Second, relevant changes in the activities of organism to a particular stimuli are called their reactions or responses. Third, the working together of various organs in a systematic, controlled and efficient way to produce proper response to various stimuli is called coordination. Fourth, the coordination between the various cells and organs essential for diverse activities to maintain physiological balance is called homeostasis. Nervous system. Nervous system is made up of nervous tissues. Sixth, the nervous system is formed of three distinct components, namely neurons, neurologia, and nerve fibers. 7. A neuron or nerve cell is a structural and functional unit of the nervous system. ரொம்ப important ஒன்னாடி இது. 8. The neuron is the longest cell of the human body. இது ஒரு important ஒன்னாடி. Human bodyல இருக்கக்கூடிய longest cell neuron தான். எவ்வளவு லென்த்னா length of 100 micrometer. 9. Information is conducted through the neurons in the form of electrical impulses from one part of body to another. Neurologia are also called as glial cells. 11. Neurologia are non-existing supporting cells of the nervous system. They do not initiate or conduct nerve impulses. 12. Nerve fibers are the long, slender process of neurons. A number of nerve fibers are bundled up together to form nerves. Structure of neuron. A neuron typically consists of three basic parts: cyton, dendrites, and axon. Cyton also called cell body or pericardium. 15. The abundant cytoplasm of the cyton is called neuroplasm. 16. The large granular bodies present in the cytoplasm of the cyton are called Nissls granules. 17. Neurons do not have the ability to divide. Ability கிடையாது, divide ஆகக்கூடிய ability. 18. Several structures present in the cytoplasm that help in transmission of nerve impulse to and from the cell body are called neurofibrils. 19. Dendrites are the numerous branched cytoplasmic process that project from the surface of the cell body and conduct nerve impulses to the cyton. 20. The axon is a single elongated slender projection that carries impulses away from the cyton. 21. The end of the axon terminates as fine branches which terminate into knob-like swelling called synaptic knob. Okay. At the 22. The plasma membrane of the axon is called axonema, while the cytoplasm of the axon is called axoplasm. 23. The protective sheath covering some axon is called myelin sheath. 24. The myelin sheath is further covered by the layer of swan cells called neurolema. 25. The myelin sheath breaks at intervals by diffractions called nodes of Ranvier. 26. The region between the nodes of Ranvier is called the internode. 27. Myelin sheath acts as an insulator and ensures rapid transmission of nerve impulses. 28. A junction between the synaptic knob of the action of one neuron and the dendron of the next neuron is called a synaptic junction, synapse. 29. Information passes from one neuron to another through Synapses with the release of chemicals known as neurotransmitter from the synaptic knob. அடுத்த types of neurons பார்க்க போறோம். 30. In unipolar neurons, only one nerve process arises from the cyton, which acts as a both axon and dendron. 31. In bipolar neurons, the cyton gives rise to two nerve process, of which one acts as a axon and other as a dendron. 32. In multipolar neurons, the cyton gives rise to many dendrons and axon. 33. Unipolar neurons are found in early embryos but not in adults. Bipolar neurons are found in the retina of the eye and olfactory epithelium of nasal chambers. 35. Multipolar neurons are found in the cerebral cortex of brain. So, இந்த ஒன்னோட important multipolar neurons எங்க இருக்குன்னா cerebral cortex of brain. 36. Sensory or afferent neurons carry impulses from the sense organ to the central nervous system. 37. Motor or efferent neurons carry impulses from the central nervous system to the effector organs such as muscle, fiber, or the gland. 38. Association neurons conduct impulses between sensory and motor neurons. Types of nerve fibers. 39. In a myelinated nerve fiber, the axon is covered with a myelin sheath. In a non-myelinated nerve fiber, the axon is not covered by the myelin sheath. Myelinated and non-myelinated nerve fibers form the white matter and the gray matter of the brain. Very important. Transmission of the nerve impulse. Information from the receptor is transmitted as electrical impulse and is received by the dendritic tips of the neuron. 43. The impulse travels from the dendrite to the cell body and then along the axon to its terminal end. 44. On reaching the axonal end, the nerve endings release a chemical called neurotransmitter which diffuses across the synapses. 45. The flow of nerve impulses from the axonal end of the one neuron to the dendrite of another neuron through the synapse is called synaptic transmission. 46. Each neuron can transmit 1,000 nerve impulses per second and it makes as many as 10,000s of synaptic contacts with the other neurons. 47. Neurotransmitters are the chemicals which allow the transmission of nerve impulses from axon terminal of one neuron to the dendron of another neuron or to an effector organ. 48. The important neurotransmitter released by the neuron is called, so இது ஒரு important ஒன்று, acetylcholine. So இதுதான் அந்த important neurotransmitter released by neurons. Human nervous system. Human nervous system is differentiated into central nervous system CNS and peripheral nervous system PNS and autonomic nervous system ANS. The CNS acts as a center for information processing and drug control. It consists of the brain and the spinal cord. 51. The PNS is made of the nerves which connect the brain and the spinal cord to all parts of the body. 52. The ANS is formed of sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. அடுத்து CNS, central nervous system. 53. The brain and the spinal cord are well protected in bony cavities of the skull and the vertebral column respectively. 54. The CNS is formed of two types of matter, namely white matter and gray matter with respect to the presence of or absence of myelin sheath. 55. The brain is covered by three connective tissues membrane called meningitis. 56. The outermost thick fibrous membrane covering the brain is called Duramater. 57. The middle thin muscular membrane providing web-like cushion is called Arachnoid membrane. 58. The innermost thin delicate membrane richly supplied with blood is called Piamater. 59. Meningeal membranes protect the brain from mechanical injury. 60. Meningitis is an inflammation of the meninges commonly caused by the viral and bacterial infections. 61. A human brain is formed of three main parts: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Forebrain தான் நம்ம cerebrum அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவோம். The forebrain is formed of cerebrum and diencephalon. சரிங்களா? diencephalon. Okay. The diencephalon consists of dorsal thalamus and ventral hypothalamus. 64. The cerebrum is the largest portion, forming nearly 2/3 of the brain. 65. The cerebrum is longitudinally divided into two halves called right and left cerebral hemisphere by a deep cleft called the median cleft. 66. The two cerebral hemispheres are interconnected by a thick band of nerve fibers called corpus callosum. The outer portion of each cerebral hemisphere formed by gray matter is called the cerebral cortex. 68. The inner or deeper part of the cerebral hemisphere formed of white matter is called the cerebral medulla. 69. The elevations formed by the extreme folding of the cortex are called gyri, and the depression between them are called sulci. Gyri and sulci increase the surface area of the cerebrum. 71. Each cerebral hemisphere is divisible into frontal lobe, parietal lobe, and a temporal lobe, and a occipital lobe together form a cerebral lobes. 72. The cerebrum is responsible for thinking, intelligence, consciousness, memory, imagination, reasoning, and willpower. Thalamus and hypothalamus. 73. The thalamus present in the cerebral medulla is a major conducting center for sensory and motor signaling. It acts as a relay center. 74. The hypothalamus lies at the base of the thalamus. 75. The hypothalamus controls involuntary function like hunger, thirst, sleep, sweating, sexual desire, anger, fear, water balance, and blood pressure. 76. The hypothalamus acts as a thermoregulatory, அதாவது temperature control center of the body. Hypothalamus இது ஒரு important word. 77. The hypothalamus controls the secretion of hormones from the anterior pituitary gland and is an important link between the nervous system and endocrine system. So இதையும் ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கோங்க, important word. அடுத்து midbrain and hindbrain. 78. The midbrain is located between the thalamus and hindbrain. 79. The dorsal portion of the midbrain consists of four rounded bodies called corpora quadrigemina. 80. Corpora quadrigemina control visual and auditory hearing reflexes. 81. The hindbrain is formed of three parts: cerebellum, pons, medulla oblongata. 82. The cerebellum is the second largest part of the brain, formed of two large-sized hemisphere and a middle vermis. 83. The cerebrum coordinates voluntary movements and also maintain body balance. 84. Pons is a Latin word meaning bridge. 85. Pons is a bridge of nerve fiber that connects the lobes of cerebellum and relays signals between the cerebellum, spinal cord, midbrain, and the cerebrum. Pons control respiration and sleep cycle. So 86, one word important. 87. The medulla oblongata is a posterior most part of the brain that connects the spinal cord and various part of the brain. 88. The medulla oblongata has cardiac center, the respiratory centers, and vasomotor centers to control heartbeat, respiration, and contraction of the blood vessels respectively. The medulla oblongata also regulates vomiting and salivation. So this is very important. And the human brain constitutes nearly 60% of fats. 91. The most crucial molecules that determine the brain's integrity are called essential fatty acids. EFAS. இதை ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கோங்க. Overview of brain functions such as cerebral cortex function என்னன்னா sensory perception, control of voluntary functions, language, thinking, memory, decision making, creativity. இதெல்லாம் cerebral cortex தான். Thalamus act as a relaxation. Hypothalamus temperature control, thirst, hunger, urination, important link between nervous system and endocrine glands. Cerebellum maintenance of posture and balance, coordinate voluntary muscle activity. Pons and medulla role in sleep awake cycle, cardiovascular, respiratory and digestive control centers. Spinal cord பார்க்கிறோம் 92. The spinal cord is a cylindrical structure lying in the neural canal of the vertebral column. 93. The spinal cord extends from the lower end of the medulla oblongata to the first lumbar vertebra. 94. The posterior most region of the spinal cord tapers into the thin fibrous thread-like structure called filum terminale. 95. Internally, the spinal cord contains a cerebrospinal fluid filled cavity known as a central canal. 96 is ஒரு important word. The gray matter of the spinal cord is H shaped. சரிங்களா? Spinal cord ஓட அந்த gray matter H shaped இருக்கும். Upper end of the H forms a posterior horns and the lower end forms a anterior horns. 98. A bundle of fibers passing into the posterior horn forms a dorsal or afferent roots. 99. Fibers passing outward from the anterior horn form the ventral or efferent roots. 100. The dorsal and ventral roots join to form the spinal nerves. 101. In the spinal cord, the white matter is external and has bundles of nerve tracts. 102. The spinal cord conducts sensory and motor impulses to and fro from the brain and controls the reflex action of the body. 103. Electroencephalogram EEG இதோட எக்ஸ்பென்ஷன் ரொம்ப முக்கியம். Electroencephalogram is an instrument which records the electrical impulse of the brain. ரொம்ப important. 104. EEG can detect abnormalities in brain waves and help diagnose seizures, epilepsy, brain tumors and head injuries. Cerebrospinal fluid. 105. The brain is suspended in the special fluid environment called cerebrospinal fluid, CSF அப்படிவாங்க. இது ஒரு important. And 106. CSF is a lymph-like watery fluid that surrounds and protects the brain within the skull. 107. CSF also fills the central canal of the spinal cord. 108. One function of the CSF is that it acts as a shock absorbing fluid and protects the brain from the damage when subject to sudden jerk. Jerkல இருந்து பாதுகாக்கிறது, அந்த ஷாக்ல இருந்து பாதுகாக்கிறதுக்கு CSF ஓட ஒரு ஃபங்க்ஷன். 109. CSF also supplies nutrition to the brain. 110. CSF collects and removes waste from the brain. 111. CSF is also responsible for maintaining a constant pressure inside the cranium. Reflex action. 112. A reflex is any response that occurs automatically without consciousness. 113. There are two types of reflexes: simple or basic reflexes and acquired or conditioned reflexes. 114. Simple or basic reflexes are inbuilt and unlearned responses. Example: winking of eyes, sneezing, coughing, yawning. 115. Acquired or controlled conditioned reflexes are the result of practice and learning. Example: playing harmony by striking a particular key on seeing a music note. 116. Most of the reflex action are monitored and controlled by the spinal cord, hence they are known as spinal reflexes. 117. The pathway taken by the nerve impulse to accumulate reflection is called the reflex arc. 118. When we touch the very hot pan, the stimulus heat is sensed by the receptor in our hand called heat receptor or thermoreceptors. 109. The stimulus heat triggers an impulse in the sensory neuron. 120. The sensory neuron transmits or conveys the message to the spinal cord. So, அங்கேருந்து அப்படி அந்த sensory neuron அந்த இதை மெசேஜை கன்வே பண்ணுது, டிரான்ஸ்மிட் பண்ணுது ஸ்பைனல் கார்டுக்கு. Spinal cord interprets and simulates and passes the impulse on the to the relay neuron, which in turn transmit it to a motor neuron. ஸோ அப்படியே பாஸ் ஆகி அவங்க என்ன பண்றாங்க, மோட்டார் நியூரான் போறாங்க, உடனே கை எடுக்கிறாங்க வெளியில. ஸோ மோட்டார் நியூரான் கேரி த கமாண்ட் ஃப்ரம் த ஸ்பைனல் கார்டு டு அவர் ஆம். அப்படிதானே, அந்த மோட்டார் நியூரான் தான் ஸ்பைனல் கார்ட்லேருந்து கமாண்ட் வருது, அப்போ நம்ம ஆம்க்கு போகுது. இந்த ரிஃப்ளெக்ஸ் எக்ஸாம்பிள் ஆஃப் டச்சிங் ஆஃப் ஹார்ட் ஃபேன், the muscle in the arm is the effector organ that respond to the heat. So இது ஒரு important effector receptor பார்த்துக்கோங்க. அடுத்து PNS, peripheral nervous system 1 to 4. The peripheral nervous system is formed by the nerves arising from the brain and the spinal cord. 1 to 5. Nerves arising from the brain are called cranial nerves. Nerves arising from the spinal cord are called spinal nerves. In a man, there are 12 pairs of cranial nerves. இது important 127 வச்சுக்கோங்க. 12 pairs of cranial nerves. சரிங்களா, மேன்ல. An example of sensory cranial nerve is the optic nerve, which innervates the eye. 1 to 9. Some cranial nerves are motor nerves, which help in rotation of the eyeball and also innervate the eye muscles of iris and tear gland. 130. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. இது ஒரு important. எப்படி 12 pairs of cranial nerves, அதே மாதிரி 31 pairs of spinal nerves important. 131. Each spinal nerve has a dorsal sensory roots and ventral motor roots. ஒவ்வொரு ஸ்பைனல் நர்வ்லையும் இதெல்லாம் இருக்கும், டார்சல் சென்சரி ரூட்டும் வென்ட்ரல் மோட்டார் ரூட்டும். 132. The direction of impulses in the dorsal spinal root is towards the spinal cord and in the ventral spinal roots away from the spinal cord. Autonomic nervous system ANS அப்படி சொல்லுவோம்ல. 133. The autonomic nervous system ANS is also called the, so இது ஒரு இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் ஒன்று, visceral nervous system. ANS இன்னொரு பேரும் சொல்லுவாங்க, visceral nervous system. ANS regulates the function of the internal visceral organs through its two antagonistic, அதாவது opposite components, sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. 135. The sympathetic and parasympathetic system enable the body to perform rapid and specific visceral activity in order to maintain steady state. 139. 136. The ANS controls the involuntary function of the visceral organs. சரிங்களா, இதெல்லாம் பார்த்துக்கோங்க. அப்புறம் கீ நம்பர்ஸ் டு ரிமெம்பர். நியூரான் லென்த் வந்து நம்ம பார்த்தோம் ஓவர் 100 மைக்ரோமீட்டர் அண்ட் இம்பல்சஸ் பெர் நியூரான் எவ்வளோனா 1000 per செகண்டுக்கு. கிரானியல் நர்வ்ஸ் நான் இம்பார்ட்டன் சொன்னோம்ல 12 பேர்ஸ், ஸ்பைனல் நர்வ்ஸ் வந்து 31 பேர்ஸ். பிரெயினில் இருக்கக்கூடிய ஃபேட்டோட கண்டென்ட் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா ஒரு அப்ராக்சிமேட்டாக 60%. ஸோ இதெல்லாம் கொடுத்துருக்காங்க. ஓகே ரைட், பார்த்துக்கோங்க. ஸோ நம்ம சேனலில் 10th சயின்ஸு ஆல் யூனிட் கம்ப்ளீட்டட். இது யூஸ் பண்ணிக்கோங்க. எதுவும் டவுட்னா கமெண்ட் செக்ஷன் இருக்காங்க. நம்ம நெக்ஸ்ட் வீடியோவில் நெக்ஸ்ட் டாபிக் நம்ம பிளான் பண்ணி நான் பண்ணுறேன். சரிங்களா, தேங்க்ஸ்.